Good morning, everyone. My name is Carol Walker. I'm Senior Associate Director here at LSU, and I have the honor of introducing our speakers for today. The topic is demystifying the quarter system for athletic academic service professionals, and we have Kelli Hinton, Associate Athletic Director of Academic Services at University of South Florida, and also the interim. Um, and former interim director at Oregon State. Then we have Abby Crowell, who's assistant athletic director for academic counseling at Oregon State University. So I will let them take it from here.
Thank you, Carol. All right. Thank you, everyone, for taking time out your day, mornings, to attend this presentation. Abby and I are excited to be here to talk more about the court system, as we know that it is becoming a concern for a lot of other schools dealing with realignment of the conferences. A lot of schools are starting to have to deal with it more than they have in the past. Just to get some introductions. I'm Kelli Hinton. As Carol said, I am the Associate Athletic Director of Academic Services at University of South Florida right now. I've been in this industry for this is year 18 for me, and I've kind of grew up in the quarter system, whereas I started in the quarter system as an undergrad, and my first experience working was with a quarter school. So super excited to share my love for it. And then I'll let Abby introduce herself.
Hi, good morning. My name is Abby Crowell. As Carol said, I'm currently the Assistant Athletic Director for Academic Counseling here at Oregon State. So I oversee our academic counseling program as well as football and men's basketball. I've been at Oregon State for about 4 years. Prior to that, I completed the Florida State Internship Fellowship Program. Before that, I was a GA at Seattle University while I did my master's, and they are on the quarter system. So that was kind of my first intro to that system, and then got semester school experience at Florida State, and now have been back here for 4 years. So I've worked in both, seen kind of the benefits, negatives of both, and Kelli and I are going to kind of dig into that today. And part of why we wanted to give this presentation was we've both been at both and both seen the impacts, and just being able to kind of talk about it with a larger group and with folks that maybe have only worked at semester schools, just giving a little more confidence and ownership over maybe seeing some of those quarter school transcripts, or if your students are leaving for a quarter school, just hopefully giving you guys some tools on how to navigate those conversations and just kind of learn a little bit more and feel more comfortable with it. And our overview today. So these are kind of the topics we're going to run through. So learning and understanding the differences in the two academic systems. We'll talk about some scheduling impacts for athletics on both sides, talk about eligibility, obviously talk about the transfer portal, and then give you guys some time for questions at the end.
Okay, there we go. So just trying to explain the two. Quarter calendars have 3 terms where semesters have 2, and just talking about the true academic year. So quarter calendars run fall, winter, spring, when we know semesters are fall and spring. Uh-oh.
Sorry, Kelli.
Sorry. The quarter calendar usually starts late September and goes until June, whereas we know semesters are August through May. And so we have to be mindful with the quarter calendar that everything moves fast. Each quarter is about 10 weeks. Some can be 11 if you throw in the difference of finals, but it goes super, super fast. And we take advantage of summer school on both semester and quarter if available. But when you think of the quarter calendar, you think about like a rent that is 3 times a year versus maybe a semester is like kind of like a middle distance run that you have 16 weeks to figure things out versus 10. There's very, demanding schedules, whereas we have to be very aware of every little detail. I know most of us use Teamworks which is, we know is taking over everything these days. But we're super excited that they provide the options to be able to see the calendars, to be able to integrate with practice schedules, to integrate with nutrition and lifting. And we're able to be proactive instead of being more reactive. And we have to do that very, very quickly when on a quarter calendar.
I'm a very visual learner, so you'll see a couple of visuals in here, just because that's how my brain works and helpful for me to kind of see it laid out. And this is kind of what I talk about when talking with recruits, especially football, which we'll get to. But like Kelli mentioned, our fall quarter does not start until the end of September. But then we get out in the middle of June. So summer is kind of shifted back maybe a month. So you're still getting kind of the same amount of time off, just spaced out differently. So again, 10 weeks of instruction per quarter. Our terms are 11 weeks long with a week of finals at the end. They're faster paced, shorter terms, so it's really quick. Like Kelli said, a sprint. Definitely primarily schools on the West Coast, but there are a few sprinkled throughout the rest of the country as well. And then, yeah, and the semester system slower, a little bit more time to get your feet under you on the quarter side. We kind of tell our students like, hey, if you get behind, it's going to be really hard to catch up. Got midterms really quickly, and just a lot more coursework condensed into that 10-week term. This is kind of a breakdown of how to think about credits. So rather than 120 credits to graduate, which we're used to at the semester school, our quarter calendar has 180 credits for graduation. Instead of, it's still 6 credits per term they need to pass. Instead of 18 a calendar year, it'll be 27. And instead of 24 credits in that first year, they need 36. 40, 60, 80 stays the same. Football is 8 credits in the fall rather than 9. And then if they don't hit that number and they need to make that up to earn their games back, they need 40 credits rather than 27. Our students are taking 3 to 4 courses per term. Again, fast-paced, condensed, rather than the 4 to 5 courses that are a little bit extended, more moderate timing. Our midterms kind of happen throughout the term. They could be weeks 3 and 4 and 6 and 7, or they kind of just could be throughout weeks 3 through 7. You get kind of a breather weeks 1 and 2, get your syllabus, get your introduction set, get a little break at the end before finals, but weeks 3 through 7, you're really intensely engaged in that coursework. It also means that any academic intervention needs to happen immediately and rapidly. Because like I said, if you get behind, it's very hard to catch up. And so that's why our grade tracking is important everywhere for all of our institutions, but particularly in the quarter system to catch things kind of as they're happening so that you can mitigate more quickly.
Yeah, and just piggybacking on that, like it's not just athletics that is aware of the timing. Campus is also aware of it because they're teaching different classes every term. So as Abby mentioned, the progress reports are very important. Once we reach out to, faculty or to, the faculty athletic rep, those connections can help, with the academic intervention if needed, so that we're not waiting until, week 8 to try to make things right, knowing that there's only 2 weeks left in the quarter plus finals. And then there's a quick turnaround to start the next one. And so next slide is a couple of other schools that are notable academics for their academic systems. I'll say we've both worked at Oregon State. University of Oregon is also a quarter calendar, and that is kind of just based on the state of Oregon. So most schools that, I know people are always like, why can't y'all just switch to semesters, where it is a state decision for some institutions that they have to be on the quarter calendar. Northwestern is on the quarters, UCLA, Stanford, and like I said earlier, with the conference realignment, you're seeing a lot more West Coast schools maybe going to Big Ten. And now you have some of these that used to be true semester conferences having to work with, quarter schools and deal with transfer articulations and assessments based on a quarter calendar now within their group of schools, having to make sure they're meeting all those eligibility marks on now a semester calendar. And then there's a couple of other quarter schools that have unique calendars. Louisiana Tech is a quarter school, but their calendar kind of is very unique. And I suggest everybody, if you're interested, just go look at their website. They start September, but then they end in like November, and then they start winter in November, but they get a winter break still. And so you just have to be very cautious of everyone's quarter calendars. I know I've seen transcripts where you have a student in a quarter calendar, but that quarter calendar is also split. So students may do a 5-week set of courses and then start another set of courses the second 5 weeks, but it's still within the fall quarter. So as you're looking at transcripts from schools that are in the quarter system, a keen eye of detail is very important to make sure you're getting all the credits that need to be met for that. And we're talking about athletic scheduling impact. The high risk sports per each term, football is high risk, but on the quarter calendar, they have an advantage from an athletic side. They play the first 4 games without being in school because fall quarter doesn't begin until late September. And we all know the football season starts mid-August or close to the end of August. So quarter schools will play the first 4 games normally not being enrolled. How do we get them certified? We use terms about first day of competition versus end of summer or start of semester. So a lot of the fall sports will become certified. And if they need summer, that summer class has to end before the first day of competition. And so quarter schools, we use a different lingo on certain things just to make sure that our students are hitting eligibility benchmarks. On a semester, calendars are more stabilized towards the sport. And so we know football starts in August, school starts in August, and usually they're starting classes the same time the first game of the season is. When talking about winter term, basketball is a very high risk sport. Their season usually coincides with midterms on the quarter calendar. And then when the heavy travel picks up, when you think about finals during the quarter calendar, that's close to when certification happens. It's also when they're getting ready to start conference season. So conference games usually beginning of January. On the quarter calendar, that is the first week. It's usually the start of winter quarter. So most semester schools don't start till maybe mid-January. Quarters usually start the first week of January. And so trying to make sure students are, registered full-time, communicating with professors about maybe possibly missing first week of classes because they're on the road, having the academic coordinator, academic advisor travel with the team, to try to offset some of missing assignments because, as Abby mentioned, first week goes fast. Yes, it might be syllabus week, but there might also be assignments due that first week. That way you don't get behind weeks 2, 3, and throughout the quarter. And this winter for the semester school for basketball, semesters, midterms kind of become more predictable. You're able to plan out based on their season and their travel schedule and kind of get ahead of it with professors. If you need to set up proctoring, try to, make other arrangements. They take it before they leave or they take it when they get back. It just makes it a little easier, but quarters, you kind of just got to be on it all the time. And then for the spring sports, so track, baseball, softball, finals often happens during the postseason. And so we'll talk about it. There's a trick that we try to use in the quarter calendar. It's a special bylaw that I think only quarter schools are aware of. But just trying to be mindful of if they're in postseason, like I know Oregon State baseball always is a strong candidate to go to World Series. How do we take care of their finals? How do we plan ahead? And that's, again, constant communication to professors, getting faculty athletic reps involved ahead of time so that they can also be a voice of support, and just getting out on campus and letting people know that, we take academics seriously. For a semester school, there's a little bit of separation between finals and championships. And so usually semester schools, your finals weeks are either now. I know some schools are going through finals right now or next week, the next couple of weeks. And then you have a little bit of time probably preparing for summer school, but then they're in postseason, close to end of May and it's going to June. So you're able to plan those out a little bit more.
And then Kelly kind of touched on some of these things, but kind of digging a little bit more. There are championship conflicts that kind of exist with the quarter system. So most championships are scheduled around semester timelines, which often kind of leads to scheduling conflicts for us that we need to manage with faculties and with our faculty athletic rep as well. Similarly, the travel challenges that kind of emerge from that that disrupt academic commitments and training schedules. So this kind of leads into another conversation about alignment and how we support with athletic season. So fall sports, like Kelly said, benefit from competition prior to fall term actually starting. So football gets usually 4 games. And then even our other soccers and volleyballs, cross countries get some competition prior to school starting. So, but they do miss out on the full summer term. So it'll be different at every school, but Oregon State has an 11-week summer term that goes until September, then early September typically. And so our students will have to typically use a 4-week term or an 8-week term that ends either early to mid-July or mid-August, kind of depending on when their first date of competition is. So although there's that benefit of school starting later, we do lose out on some summer school options, which is challenging. And then the transfer portal.
Uh-oh. Abby, are you frozen?
I think is another thing that is based around more, which then aligns with more so.
Did everybody hear that? I think Abby, you was freezing.
Yeah, I think I'm freezing.
Okay. We can go back over where we're at transfer portal.
Okay, am I good, Kelly?
Yeah.
Okay.
Technology, friends.
Sorry. So transfer portal. For example, right now we're in the basketball window. It was actually more advantageous for us this year because it did open during the second week of school rather than right before week 1. So we got to get our students a little bit more settled before they made their decision or before they went in the portal. But in the past, it was challenging because we would finish up winter quarter, portal would open, and then kind of really that quick decision of, okay, are you going to stay enrolled in spring term or are you going to take the term off? However, still challenging because we're currently, so the portal opened in week 2 of our spring term. We're currently in week 3. And so our students that are in the portal are actively taking visits, are, their mind is on other decisions right now. And so keeping them engaged in that fast-paced 10-week term for the next 7 or 8 weeks is going to be challenging. Whereas at semester schools, you're 3 or 4 weeks away from kind of being done. So the bulk of the work is complete except for maybe, wrapping up finals. So I think that's another piece to keep in mind. And I think obviously the football transfer window, the new one, impacted all of us greatly, and I'm sure in different ways. The transfer portal this time around opened 3 days before school started. So kind of, again, didn't leave us a lot of wiggle room in terms of getting students in and out of classes. Really had to work closely with campus to ensure that we could get students into classes and that our students that were outgoing, could withdraw if they needed to, or just make the decisions that they needed in a short time window. Definitely, especially this time around, I'm sure for a lot of folks caused APR concerns, particularly with maybe some of those late withdrawals. So.
And I think like everybody here understands the importance of campus partners, but like with the quarter system, as Abby was talking about, like getting them in classes is one thing, but getting them admitted to the university is a whole nother thing where, they have to do applications and transcripts have to be sent and everything has to be official. And, you know, yes, we all have those working relationships with admissions and we can keep track, through Slate or whatever platforms you may have. But if everything is not there and they're admitted conditionally, quote unquote, for semester schools, you don't have to really worry about it until maybe they're doing summer school or you need for fall. But with quarters, that hold is going to be placed on for spring quarter, which is still part of the academic year, and you're having to deal with more battles that should have been taken care of in, week 0 or week 1, and now they're coming up again for a whole new term that they need classes in order to meet the eligibility benchmarks. And then APR, as we all know, is a concern. As Abby mentioned, students are taking visits right now, but are still actively in classes. If they, withdraw, those are points that we lose. And then and someone tell me if I'm wrong, but just knowing for a quarter calendar, with the APR, it's hard to, it's unique. It's not hard, it's unique to calculate it because you're calculating it across 3 terms versus 2. And then sometimes those numbers are doubled, which can affect the overall APR numbers.
Yeah, quarter APR, if anybody's familiar, is quite the math problem. So happy to talk about that at some point if anyone's interested, but definitely kind of its own beast. I think another thing that kind of comes up for us being, and I'm sure that I know there are semester schools that start pretty early in January as well, but one thing that comes up for us too with that start, particularly in winter term, is when we have freshmen admits that start mid-year and we've gotten kind of their graduation letter, but we need that final official transcript. A lot of their high schools are closed for winter break. And that happens to us sometimes too when trying to get transcripts from colleges. So that's another kind of unique thing. But kind of talking more of the benefits too, and especially for our student athletes, they seem to really enjoy the more frequent enrollment and more course options. So there's a lot of opportunity to kind of take a variety of things, really explore different majors, different programs, without it kind of getting you in trouble. Some things you don't like something, it's over pretty quickly, or you enjoy something and you find out, great, I want to do more of this. So I think particularly like even me, my attention span keeps getting shorter with all the screen time that we have. And I think probably a lot of you have seen that with our students. And so I think that pace, just keeping them engaged is really, really helpful. And then Kelly kind of alluded to this spring term exception earlier. So we put the bylaw for you in case anyone's interested. But this is something we utilize every year for our spring sports, that allows winter graduates to participate in competition during spring term without enrollment. So particularly benefits our spring sports, but also those like gymnastics that maybe have postseason that goes into spring term. So that's kind of a nice thing, because then they can just finish out their season and then kind of enjoy whatever their next endeavor is. And then, like I said, visual. So kind of created this graphic for you all. Kelly and I, one of the things we were kind of talking about as we were developing this is obviously the PTD and like credit transfers have come up a lot, but also translating full-time terms has been a conversation when we kind of get students that are the opposite academic schedule. And so just kind of understanding like, when you get a student from a quarter school or vice versa, kind of understanding how those numbers even out. And then the PTD piece is on the right in that pink purple color. Just kind of showing you like it's the same PTD, but again, the credit hours obviously change. So just kind of, if it helps, if you ever get a quarter student and it's like, okay, were they on track? Like how many credit hours do they have from there? Kind of just gives you a ballpark. And that was definitely it's definitely a learning curve if you ever do choose to go to a quarter institution. But I think at least you pick it up pretty quickly, and figure out, how those two equate. So
And
anything else on
we
this?
say that like because there's when you're switching from quarters or to semesters or vice versa, it's a 1.5, whether you multiply or divide. And so you're going to get, some interesting numbers when you're coming either way. But when you think of full-time terms, there are no half-Cs. And so I know the chart may look like, you either got 1.5 or 2.5, and you can't round up. And so it's literally counting terms versus counting years or semesters. And so if it's easier, I know some of my current staff, they'll see me pull the Post-it note out, or I go to a whiteboard. Abby knows I'm a whiteboarder, and just write it out so you can count it out. And that's probably the safest way to try to figure out the number of terms when you're trying to get quarters calendar information. Academic flexibility, like more benefits of the quarter system. 10 weeks means shorter, but and more intense, but students get, a genuine feel of each quarter. I know sometimes when you're in semester, you're just feeling like things are just stretched out for long periods of time. With the quarter, you kind of see the finish line. Although, maybe by week 4, that first midterm, you're thinking, okay, grades get posted, where else are we at? And so Abby was saying, sometimes our students are just kind of, things just get overwhelming and you just like, I just want to shut it off. And so with a quarter calendar, you get your assignments done, you take your exams by 10 weeks and they go fast, you're done. But we're also planning for the next term by week 5. So priority registration can happen. I know in spring term, which they're in right now, there's summer registration and there's fall registration. There's 2 separate. And I know at some semester schools, they're done at the same time. And so that kind of helps students understand planning for the multiple terms that are going on. As Abby mentioned, with shorter terms, they can choose, a wide variety of classes. There needs to be 180 credits just because there's more terms to take in them. But that's the good time when it's as an advisor, you're helping students figure out what they want to major in. And so, of course, everyone has the gen eds. And so you have to take those regardless of what you major in. But if they don't know what they want to, major in, other than, they come in and say, I like football, I like basketball, that's what I like. But then those are times for you to, as an advisor to have those conversations. What do you like outside of that? Let's see if a gen ed can help you, choose a major. Everybody has a gaming aspect. They love video games. Well, does your, school have a communications, or digital broadcasting, or have some kind of gaming, major or classes, and start that way. And so it gives them a chance to try some things out. And if they don't like it, move to the next. But then it's always being able to share the message to them that 40, 60, 80 remains the same no matter where you are. And so by a certain time, we have to make a decision to pick a major. Oops. And so the quick course retakes. So the quarter system allows students to, like we say, we'll know if someone's pretty much not going to be successful probably by week 5, which is a midterm for semester times. If you're thinking 16 weeks, 8 will be that. But by week 5, we'll kind of have an idea if someone's not going to make it or needs to put in extra work. And then you start planning with that priority registration of another class or a repeat of it. You also can be able to, I know some schools will offer the course selections for all terms, so you can plan out ahead. And if this summer doesn't work, can you take it the following fall, if not in season? And so the recovery plan, we think of it more of like for students, but it helps staff as well. And it helps you be able to plan out, be more proactive instead of being reactive. They can catch up on credits. And so knowing when you're planning it out with the athletic schedule, I can just talk with football, they're only in season for fall, and then they have winter and spring to try to take a balance of it. So if you're being strategic in the fall quarter, you're going to have them take between probably 12 and 14 credits. And quarter calendars have a range of credits from 2 to 3 to 4 to 5, whereas semesters are probably 3 credits mainly, 4 for maybe the languages. So you have a little bit more to play around with to get to full-time status and a little bit more. And so just able to be more proactive and be able to plan it out the year out when you're in a quarter calendar. Switch. So we talked about some benefits, but there's some intensity with being in 10-week. It can be overwhelming. And I know one thing that we used to always tell during recruiting trips, whether it was football or gymnastics or golf or soccer, our job is to never make them feel overwhelmed. And so being able to explain to them the importance of taking advantage of week 1, the importance of taking advantage of week 2, taking advantage of the resources that's offered within the academic services area, being able, if you have a learning specialist, don't wait to ask for a tutor, because if you wait, then you may be at the end of the line for requests, but then also you're going to be behind in homework. So just making them aware that they exist, but also don't want them to feel overwhelmed in it. And the same thing goes for staff. Abby and I worked together some years, and it was like, take some time, being able to lean on, those that work with the sport with you, or those are in your department, and that everybody is aware of what's happening. We all need some time to rest and recharge, because quarters go so fast and they affect everybody. Time management, like, thankfully, we all have teamworks. And I always say, use the resources you have, use the technology you have. They are always on their phones, so they shouldn't have an excuse to miss anything, but the option is there. And so we just have to use what's being out there to be able to make these, options for our student athletes, not say easier, but more manageable, to make sure they take advantage of those, because it helps. All right, our favorite thing, the transfer portal. We talked a little bit about it earlier, and talked about the number of credits. So 1 semester credit equals 1.5 quarter credits. Always confirm equivalencies before certifying new transfers. And we know as academics, we can say that, and that may not always be the case from a coaching standpoint. They may go ahead and, sign someone and say, okay, great, students coming, how do we, make it work? And as long as coaches are aware of the risks that they're taking, we are going to, try to figure out what's best for the student athlete. That is making sure that, pre-evals are done. If you have a transfer evaluator on your staff, if you don't, be mindful of the transcripts and make sure that everything is there. Go back to counting the actual terms and the chart that Abby shared, using that as a tool, as a reference point if you need it. Future terms, we always talk about fall, but for quarter, you plan for winter, you plan for spring, you plan for summer. You have to plan it out, be mindful of APR concerns. I think with everyone's transferring and have free will and they can go wherever they want, you're getting a lot of seniors, and they'll need to meet 60, and if they're a 5th year, they got to meet 80. How do we deal with those? How do we make that, aware to coaching staff, to the recruiters, and let them know what's happening, that, we're going to be having concerns. And if they bring them in with 1 year of eligibility remaining and they're a 5th year, then we have to worry about graduation. So having the conversations regarding, this is what you majored in there, this may not be what it is here. Are you still okay with that? And I think we all do our best with getting them what their first decision. It becomes those hard conversations of, what do you really want to do? And then we never say plan B. It's always like, okay, well, if this is changing, what is your plan for your next? And being involved with student athlete development and getting career opportunities and mentor feedback, and just can we make sure that their experience being at your institution is, holistic, but also planning for life after sport, being an alumni, if they go professional, what, take advantage of there, and making sure that they have a really, really good, a good experience while they're at our schools.
Yeah, and kind of recapping, Kelly mentioned the 1.5. Kind of stole this graphic from Oregon State's general student transfer page. So kind of another way to look at it. But I always tell our transfers, credits are proportional. So if you really think of a rule of thumb of 15 credits per term, keeping you on track for a 4-year graduation, that's going to apply at both schools. So rather than 30 credits a year at a semester school, 45 a year, at a quarter school still keeps you on track for that 180. So if that's kind of a rule of thumb for advising or for reading transcripts. And then, so when we get a semester school class here, that's a 3-credit class. For us, it's going to be 4.5 credits. But if you get a quarter school 3-credit class, you're going to want to divide that by 1.5, and it's going to be smaller. So each semester school I know kind of navigates that differently. Like, are you counting a 2.6 credit class to fulfill a 3-credit requirement? So that's going to be institution by institution. But kind of understanding that maybe as you're reading transcripts or as you're advising.
Oops, did I change it?
No.
Okay. And just thinking about, you as the staff person, it's demands, and we know that, it can lead to staff burnout. As someone that's been in this industry for, say, this will be year 18 for me, seen a lot of turnover across other institutions. And it's mindful that we all have to take our time, like take the time, rest in, reset. And because you can't, what's the saying? You can't pour from an empty cup. We want to make sure we give our student athletes, the best that we have and that they can take it, and move on with their careers. But we got to make sure we're good first. On a quarter calendar, challenges become during spring break. This is probably, I'm at a semester school now, and I get to take some time this week, and it was that week, and it was great. Whereas with the quarter school, you may get a day, but you are starting off certifying and then preparing for the next one. So that week in between winter and spring quarters is quick turnaround. You're also, depending on the sport, they may want to bring in someone that couldn't come for winter quarter because that high school may have didn't complete their fall or graduation requirements until late January, so they couldn't come for winter quarter, so they came in spring. So you're preparing for maybe a handful of first-time freshmen, or even, a transfer that maybe left the portal but didn't start in winter because they wanted some more time or they didn't get recruited till later. So it's a lot quick, fast turnaround. I feel like with quarter calendars, vacation happens in August. And that's probably about it, unless you are very intentional about taking your time. Adjusting to the system, it's like learning APR at a quarter school is, I think it's a challenge for everyone that comes from semester to quarter, because it is a huge word problem. But it does take a lot of collaborating to make sure that everybody's numbers match up. I know at one school, compliance may oversee it, academics may oversee it, but whoever it has their hands in it needs to be talking to each other to make sure that once those numbers are submitted, they're submitted properly. Any adjustments that need to be made are done. Being mindful of those that are on their last term of aid and how that can be, like I say, doubled, and that can either, be a good thing, or it could be a bad thing if someone is not eligible and then they leave. And so APR education is probably the one thing I think staffers from the quarter calendar should do on a regular basis. Certification is done fast, registration is done fast, holds is done fast. Like everything is kind of put on a ×4, ×5 accelerator, and you just have to be ready to go, go, go. And at times, if people aren't ready for that go, go, go mentality, it can burn them out. And so you have to be mindful and be supportive of your staff and each other while you're going through it. And just some best practices for academic services. So like transfer preparation, early alert systems, like say if you're in TeamWorks, take advantage of those progress reports. Send your reminders. I had my TeamWorks meeting with our liaison this morning, and just sharing, things that they're putting in new options, the Insight Center, reminders. Like early alert systems are very important in the quarter calendar. And I think they're just as important on semester schools as well. Anything that you can do to be proactive and making sure that student athletes' grades and classes are being successful, take advantage of it. Academic support, time management. And I think we all, no matter what calendar you're on, try to go into it with the holistic approach. Try to do balance between academics and athletics and wellness. We know mental health is a big thing. in everyone's area. And so we just want to make sure our students are getting the best experience, whether, on the field, on the courts, but in the classroom, and sometimes just in our space. A lot of times they just come and just want to sit and you give them a space just to be so they can figure out, what's going on and get their mind clear. So holistic approach is very encouraged if those that, especially for the younger staff, to be mindful of that. And like I said, balancing academics and athletics is vital to a student athletic success. Abby and I, like it's been a little over almost a year since I've left Oregon State, and she and I are still each other's cheerleaders and accountability partners and bounce ideas off each other. And so, like, I just say, if anything you take away from this, you have colleagues that worked with, and you can still share ideas with each other to help make your departments a little bit better, do so. We don't have we're not next door to each other anymore, but I think we still bounce ideas off each other to make sure our student athletes and our colleagues can get the best of us and we can give the best to our departments. And so we will open it up to any questions that anyone may have.
You can either unmute yourself or you can put the question in the chat for Kelli and
I have a question, if that's okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
You talked about the 18 still being applicable. You just go to 27. Uh, it's still 6 credits of degree applicable credits, though, per term minimum, right? For every sport. And then football has a caveat for fall of being 8. Is that still true?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay, cool.
Which you talked about the 18 versus 27. If they're only passing 6 a quarter, then we kind of have a concern. And so that makes it, back to the advisors and tracking eligibility for the students and making sure that everyone is hitting those marks.
And so you're also certifying 3 times, right? Like where's that's that pain.
Yep. So everything gets done one extra time.
It's
So
like, I wish
registration,
we didn't have
certification.
so many sports. But when you're doing that, with the pain points, once we get through fall, we kind of exhale with semester schools. Is there something like that for y'all? Is it like once you get through winter, is that or where do you go? Okay, we got through that high tide. Now we can kind of exhale a little bit.
We exhale in August, but no, it feels like because fall quarter ends mid-December maybe, and then you wait until grades are posted, probably like around like the 18th, 19th, 20th, and then you certify. So you're certifying like right before Christmas holiday. You get maybe a week and a half, and then you're right back at it for winter quarter because it's going to usually start the first Monday of January, whatever that is. If that Monday is the first, classes may start the second. So it's always go, go, go. I mean, I remember one year Abby and I we were probably at our own homes, but we were talking and it was like New Year's Eve. And so like just trying to figure out certification, getting ready, because you want your stuff to be ready for, the time you have to meet with the registrar to do schedule audits and check for certification. And you want to be prepared because you don't want to waste anybody else's time because we're working only with athletics. They're doing the entire campus. And it's also on the same type of timeline.
Okay, I have a question. So, in regards to certification, how do you work with your different your colleges to help with course approvals and just understanding the timing of everything and because again they do have other students. So, how does that work for you all in those relationships?
You want to take since you're there.
Yeah, I think and it'll depend on a school, but at least for us, so in terms of transfers. We're kind of doing course approvals, substitutions, transfer like syllabi, all the time. Obviously, the heavy piece is when they first get here. But especially like with the football portal, we had, 20 plus guys coming in. So we were kind of doing the priority look at like, okay, who really needs percentage? Like, what's our priority for getting syllabi looked at with our colleges? They're really great. We have a course articulation team in our registrar's office that will kind of take the first look at making sure that courses are what they need to be. And then we'll follow up with them with a syllabus. And if that doesn't change, we'll have the college look at it. And then we also, within the advising teams in each college, they either all of them are trained, like in our College of Business, or we have a few colleges where there's just one person that our certifying officer will reach out to verify that percentage. Usually during spring term, so that it's good for summer. But obviously, we have students that are off term certs as well that are going to need to be certified for percentage winter or spring too. Like we have students that every term we got a little. Obviously, we're looking at everybody every term, but we have some students that need to meet PTD outside of kind of the traditional timelines. So I don't know if that answers your question, but.
And those same advisors within the colleges, like it's one thing to just do certification, but they're also checking for students that may be less than full-time, a quarter. So they're double checking all that information. And I guess that goes back to just setting those relationships early on, letting them know this is what we need to do to make sure, athletics certification process works smoothly, and just making sure that they are aware and asking for their support in our student athletes.
That's good. I think we're coming to the end. I will be emailing both of you all because I have a question about international. But I know Mike Stone did not just chime in. I love him. But Kelly and Abby have provided their contact information for anyone else that has some additional questions. But wanted to thank you both. That was very informative for myself. I know when we do get quarter, it is a little frustrating. But I'm not going to complain anymore because I can see all that you all have to do on that end. So God bless you. But thank you so much. And again, if y'all have any questions, there's a screenshot of their emails. And y'all enjoy the rest of the summit.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.